A lovely little children's story you have there. Let me tell you the real origins behind that. Hey, what's up people, this is Procreate. My name is Joshua Dow and I'm an artist, and in this video I'm going to take some of our favorite children's stories, Disney movies, and turn them into horror stories because it's Halloween. But before we jump into it, I'm going to quickly have to apologize for not uploading as much because I'm now at uni and I have other stuff to do, but I will still try to upload as much as I can, just not as weekly as I did before. Anyway, let's jump into the drawing now. Sweet Peter, look at him, still playing in the woods like when he was a small boy, is what the neighbors used to say about Mr. Pan's only son. He will never grow up, will he? But, as cute and innocent it might have seemed to the onlookers in the early years, their opinion seemed to change as the boy got older and still refused to leave his childlike habits behind. Not right in the head he is. Mr. Pan would be better to ship him off to an institution or use that belt of his more often, at the very least. But they didn't know that Peter's father did use his belt more than often enough. In fact, had he not done so, had he tried to understand his son more and given him the support he needed, things might have turned out very differently. But they might as well not have, for, as bad as Mr. Pan was for the boy, it wasn't he who did the most damage to his slow mind. It were in the end his friends who damaged him beyond repair. The same boys that had played in the woods with Peter, had climbed trees and built forts and pretended sticks to be swords with him, were outgrowing him when they came into their teenage and adult years. Not physically, no. Barely anyone overshadowed Peter physically, but mentally, and they were cruel about it. They hit him and called him names and ridiculed him in public. Why didn't they stay young with me? Peter would mutter to himself. Why? The Darlings knew young boys were disappearing in London and were careful to lock their doors at night. They had 2 sons themselves, John and Michael, and an older daughter, Wendy. But they hadn't heard that the predator was tall and strong enough to climb up stories and snatch children through the windows. Peter, who one night had come for John and Michael, was entranced, however, when he found Wendy was there with them. She was reading bedtime stories to them when he arrived, and he wanted nothing more but to sit with them and listen. But they saw him and started yelling and struggling and left the upset Peter no choice but to take them all with him, Michael and John as his brothers that should stay forever young, and Wendy as his mother. How did you get out of it alive? Many people would ask Wendy years and years after the incident. Why didn't he kill you like he killed your brothers? He never wanted to kill me. Never wanted to kill any of us, as a matter of fact, she would say. A cold shiver still ran down her spine as she remembered arriving in his hideout, his home in the woods, and finding his collection of lost boys. Horror still gripped her body as she thought back to having to, surrounded by corpses of dozens of young boys, soon including her own brothers, read stories to them, cook for them, and stroke their cold, dead heads. But it wasn't just horror that gripped her heart. There was something else there. Longing. He just wanted company. Madame Adelaide Bonfamille was well known internationally and well liked locally. The woman in the baker shop said she was always kind to her. The boy bringing by the papers said she would always tip him well. Monsieur Jacques said she always had a smile and kind words for him when they met in the park. Yet it was no secret that she was a rather lonely person, with no one really close to her. She lived alone in a big mansion, only in the company of a rather unkind butler and her 4 cats, who she seemed to love more than anything. So it was to the townfolk's amusement, but to no one's surprise really, when the lawyer told the bartender in the local pub that she had written her will and was going to leave all her riches and possessions, including her house, to her cats. The only one who seemed to take these news not with an amused smile and a shake of the head was Edgar, Madame Adelaide's butler, who had overheard her conversation with the lawyer. Having hoped he would be the one to inherit all the belongings when the old lady passed on, He was furious and, acting on impulse, slipped quite a few sleeping pills into the cat's evening meal, hoping that, after they were gone, he would be the next choice. He was horribly mistaken. "What's the matter with Madame Adelaide, do you reckon?" the baker woman asked the farmer's wife at the daily market. The whole neighborhood had started to talk about her, bit by bit, first brief mentions, then short conversations, to full-on discussions. Madame Adelaide had stopped leaving the house, and even Edgar, who had often come round to collect her shopping, had not been seen in a while. The front garden looked uncared for and was starting to creep over the pathway, and even up the facade of the building, yet the house was not uninhabited. The lady not quietly passed away. There was smoke coming from the chimney, and lights burned behind the windows, and sometimes the madame's frail, thin silhouette could be seen holding one of her cats, who, if anyone had paid close attention, seemed oddly limp in her hands. But after some time, even that stopped. The lights died, the chimney stayed cold, and the garden was taking over the house more and more. Sure that the old lady had finally passed on, the townfolk called the police and were only too curious what they would find. It seemed like the entire neighborhood came together in the pub that night to hear what the policeman had to say. "We found poor Edgar first," said the policeman willingly, after being brought his first pint by eager listeners. "He's been dead for quite some time, that's certain. Quite smelly. We think the madame, as mad as it sounds, might have poisoned him. We found a bowl of some sort of white creme next to his corpse and smeared across his face. The madame herself hasn't been dead as long. Died from starvation just a couple of days ago, from what I would gather. She was sitting in an armchair looking as thin and frail as a skeleton. Probably couldn't feed herself after Edgar was gone. But do you want to know the creepiest thing, folks?" Folks wanted to. "Creepiest thing were by far her cats. They were dead too, but longer than her, as long as Edgar by the looks of it. Fouling, smelly little things. But she had them on her lap, all four of them, and her hand was in the rotting fur, as if stroking them. I think she thought they were still alive for the rest of her life. Gives me shivers thinking of her, carrying those poor dead things around with her for weeks." Since the cats, who Madame Adelaide had left all her possessions to, were dead themselves, and there was no living relative left, the mansion and everything else went over to the city. Soon a new family moved in, and then another one after that, and then another one. But none of them stayed long. Some would say that they could have sworn to have heard the meowing of a cat in the dark of night when they themselves had no pets. Others said they heard an old, quiet voice talking in the tone that one would use to speak to a baby, or maybe a beloved pet. Some even said they saw the tall, thin figure of an old lady in the reflection of a mirror or a dark window, with cats hung around her neck like a shawl. But when they turned to look, there was no one there. No matter what they saw or heard, no one stayed long, and soon the city of Paris stopped trying to sell the mansion and left it to itself, where it rotted away. But even after giving up trying to sell it, it stayed empty. No homeless people, traveling folk, or even stray animals seemed to want to adopt it as a dwelling. "It just has a bad feeling about it, that place," is what passerbys would say. But the townfolk knew better. The baker woman and the paper boy and Monsieur Jacques and the policeman and the bartender and the lawyer and the farmer's wife. "She left the house to her kittens," they would explain knowingly, "and if they can't have it, no one will." When the news that the ruthless Han army was taking over China, and that subsequently each family was to send one man to the empire's ranks, reached the small village in which Fan Mulan lived, her life was to change forever. It was clear to the young woman that the only man left in her family, her veteran father, elderly and war-stricken, would not last long in battle. And so, one night, driven by the fear of losing her father, she stole his armor, cut her hair, and bound down her chest to ride to the Chinese ranks in his place. Though ridiculed and untalented in military skills at first, she quickly outsmarted her way to the top of her troop and created close bonds with her fellow soldiers, and especially the captain, Li Shang. After long travels and adventures with her troop, they found themselves on a mountain pass one day, ambushed and heavily outnumbered by the Han army. But thankfully, Mulan's wits saved the day, for she managed to trigger an avalanche and wiped out the entire Hun army by doing so. But if Mulan thought she had done herself a favor by saving her troop, she was dearly mistaken, as she was wounded in the chest during the attack and the secret was revealed. This was when she saw the true natures of her dear comrades and captain, war-stricken men living through hardships for months on months, not having knowingly seen a female body in all their time at war. They did unspeakable things to the young, brave Mulan that night. After her body, as well as her spirit, was broken, Captain Li Shang, the man she had thought good, brave, and fair, the man she had followed, trusted, and even loved, declared that she had committed a crime to the Empire, disguising herself as a man and lying to her troop. He sentenced her to death. But as the sword came rushing down upon thee and the snow-kneeling Mulan, she looked up to the sky and prayed to her ancestors. She prayed not for mercy, nor for forgiveness. She prayed instead for revenge. And though her prayers did not stop the sword from cutting her down, a loud cracking and thundering could be heard from the mountain ridge above as Mulan's life ended, and for a second time that night an avalanche crashed down upon the pass, burying beneath it Shang's troops this time, along with the lifeless body of Fa Mulan. However, her fate seems not to end here, since stories have been told of a spirit being seen on that frightful mountain pass, its chest bound in flowing bandages, its hair half up in a bun in the fashion of a man, and half hanging loosely around her vengeful, unforgiving face. And though traveling women have been told to have glanced her and lived to tell the tale, no man could say the same. For every time a man tries to pass through those mountains, a terrible storm seems to gather, and an avalanche is caused, leaving no man to reach the other side. Alright, I'm so happy with how that turned out. I'm especially happy with how the backgrounds turned out, because I wasn't very good at drawing backgrounds before, and I kind of utilized my last uni project to learn how to do that and to get better at that. So if you're like me and you're someone who's naturally good at drawing backgrounds and you want to learn how to do it from a person who also wasn't very good at drawing backgrounds, then comment down below and I might make a video on my techniques at kind of getting around that hurdle of not being good at it. Also comment which horror story was your favorite, if you think I should have made this further and more gruesome and gory, or if you think it was a little bit too scary for you, which it probably wasn't. I'm gonna show you the final results one final time, but first please subscribe to this channel for more videos like this, or like tutorials or stuff like that. I do a lot of stuff related to art, and yeah, let's take a look at these drawings now. And with that, this video comes to a close. I wish you a very, very happy Halloween, and I will see you in the next video. But for now, you can find my channel here and subscribe to my channel here. Find a playlist you might like right here and a video you might like right here. I'm just going to hang around in the frame until you click on something, and I'll see you in the next video, I guess.